this is really a tough place to play. And you got a BYU team that's 9-0, knocking on the door of the college football playoffs. It's going to be rocking. And if any of you saw them play a lackluster game against Utah last week in the Holy War and think that that's an indication that this team isn't very good, I would really question that analysis, because I was concerned about some of the coaching decisions from the BYU coaching staff. Utah came to play, and the Holy War is a big rivalry game. They escaped that. They're back home. This team is 30-3 in night games dating back to 2019. The home field advantage and the fact that Kansas, they've struggled with turnovers. BYU has been very fortunate to be on the right side of the turnovers, and I'm just not going to be surprised if that happens again. And for all the sharps out there that are telling you to take Kansas, I would ask them if they were on Central Florida 2 or 3 weeks ago when that appeared to be when the ball was going to drop for BYU. But BYU wins that game by a score of 37-24. I think anybody that's stepping in front of BYU in this game is perhaps, I just don't agree with it. That's all I got to say.
All right, not buying that KU is the team to go to Provo and get it done, not stepping in front of BYU in that one. The Big 12 center stage coming up on Saturday in this week 12 of the college football slate. Don't forget, if you are joining us here, we appreciate you stopping by the college football kickoff show here on WagerTalk TV. A thumbs up as well as the subscribe button would be much appreciated, as we've got so much going on this time of year, including college basketball, the NFL, the NHL, or the NBA. The list goes on, and we have got you covered here. We're going to stick in the Big 12, and we'll welcome in Bryan Leonard to help us navigate Kansas State at home now, taking on Arizona State. I believe the Arizona State running back has been cleared. Looks like he might be going, but is it really going to make a difference? Does Kansas State lose a lot of games at home, Bryan? I don't know what to do in this spot here with these two teams.
Yeah, I apologize up front. I got a little bit of a tickle in my throat, so hopefully I can make it through this without coughing. But, I made this line 9. This is the first-ranked team the Sun Devils have faced this season. Both their losses have been on the road at Texas Tech and Cincinnati. They own a +7 turnover advantage on the year, which shows they've been a bit fortunate. I don't see this as a very physical team that should have that +7. So I think their numbers are a little bit inflated. They do have 2 big games after this as they end the season against BYU, and then they traveled in-state rival Arizona. The Sun Devils' defensive numbers aren't anything special. This club has looked worse against confident offenses, and they really haven't faced many of those on their schedule. You go through their schedule, they may have played 2 or 3 good offenses. The rest of them have been teams that have had trouble scoring all season long. Looking at Kansas State, they should come in this fired up. They lost to Houston 2 weeks ago. That's a long time to stew over a bad performance, so I expect a good one out of Kansas State. Wildcats have a fantastic run game that averages 5.8 yards per carry. That's a sizable advantage in this contest. Kansas State is undefeated at home. As you mentioned, they're very good in this building, winning by margins of 35, 24, 22, and 2. And that last game coming against in-state rival Kansas, the game that they only won by 2, a team that plays there all the time, team that's very confident, and as was just pointed out, a pretty good football team in their own right. But Kansas State is the preferred side here, but this line has dropped from 9. It's currently 7.5. We get this down to 7. This is probably a wager for me. You talked about the running back being there for Arizona State. Maybe that'll knock it down to 7. If it does, I'll be on this Kansas State Wildcats team come Saturday.
All right, liking what we're seeing here with the Wildcats. Feels like a good spot to get behind them here, but it is the Big 12, and it appears that anything can happen in these games. We also have one that's going to happen in the Big 10, and Teddy, well, talk about undefeated. Well, how about Oregon? Number 1 team in the country, getting a lot of smoke blown their way, well-deserved. They got to travel to Camp Randall to take on Wisconsin that Boy, Camp Randall just doesn't feel like it's have that same home field advantage as it has in years past. And Alabama showed us that. Actually, any team with a passing pulse has shown us that against Wisconsin. But I don't know. We got Washington on deck, I guess, in a couple of weeks for Oregon. What can we trust Wisconsin to stay within 14 in this game?
Well, I mean, the jump around at the start of the fourth quarter at Camp Randall hasn't worked quite the same way this year that it has in years past. I can do this analysis in one sentence. 4 words. I don't trust whiskey. Done. I mean, look, what's their best win? Rutgers?
Yep.
I mean, Northwestern? When you look at the Badgers' schedule, and that's what we have to deal with at this stage of the season. All right. Every time they've had to step up in class, they've gotten smacked. Every time they have to step down in class, they've been able to win. Yes, they have 5 wins this season, but this is no step down in class. The defense is down from where it's been. And, of course, the offense has been trying to throw the football for 2 years now. And it really hasn't worked. Their projected starting quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, got hurt early. Braden Locke, the backup, who's been QB most of the season, 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 1,400 total yards. It's November, and they're supposed to be passing. They have one receiver with more than 24 receptions, and he's averaging less than 10 yards per catch. It's all dink and dunk from this offense. They have not been able to move the football against any good defense, and the running game isn't working. The offensive line is down from where the Badgers have been. They're coming off 2 ugly losses. Penn State killed them here in Madison. The offense didn't work against a good D, and the Iowa game was worse. Non-competitive in defeat. Now, my biggest concern here for the Oregon side, Wisconsin coming off a bye, and that's a big deal when it comes to November games. Big Ten teams have struggled traveling coast to coast, and Oregon's last bye came in September. This is going to be their 8th straight weekend playing and their 3rd trip back east in the past month at Purdue, at Michigan, and now here. So that is a concern here, and that's probably why we've seen money coming for the dog in this game. From a situational standpoint, the one team coming off the bye, the other team a little bit gassed. I get it. But Oregon has a defense, and that's a problem for Wisconsin. Oregon has a quarterback playing for a Heisman in Dylan Gabriel. They're going to take every chance they get to pump up their Heisman contending QB. Things like that matter a lot in recruiting. And I remember what happened in Michigan. You remember what happened in Michigan. Yep. The Ducks were calling timeouts up 14 in the final minute to punch in another touchdown. They could have taken a knee. They didn't. I'm not betting against a team that does that. Dan Lanning knows the drill. So it's Oregon or pass for me. And maybe Badgers team total under might be worth a look as well.
So it's so funny, Teddy, because we get this this time of year all together. I've heard stories now this week about Brian Kelly on the hot seat in LSU. Luke Fickell, if he doesn't win this game or gets blown out and embarrassed against Oregon, things haven't exactly turned out roses there for him. But patience, right? Year 2. I mean, let's give the guys a break here. Plus, they lost their quarterback. Although defensively, Luke Fickell hasn't been that impressive here with the team he has at Wisconsin over the last couple of years.
No, he hasn't. Then again, for a team like the Badgers in the modern era, it's not easy for a Wisconsin program. Fickell's a real good X's and O guys from a recruiting standpoint. The Badgers haven't never been built on the 5-star recruits. So I'm not convinced Fickell's the problem. If Wisconsin wants to move in another direction after this year, I think they'll be setting the program back, not giving it a chance to move forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, patience, people. Everybody, patience. We got plenty of football left to go here. Get at least a couple of recruiting cycles in play, and then we'll see where it goes from there. All right, so we've got in the books Oregon, Wisconsin, Arizona State, Kansas State, as well as Kansas and BYU. Now we got a couple of games that we're going to talk about roundtable style. We'll do Tennessee, Georgia coming up, as well as Missouri and South Carolina. But do want to remind you guys, of course, the opportunity to partner up with any one of these 3 guys, or hell, all 3 of them at that point. You can do so by heading over to their pages at WagerTalk.com. Don't forget, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you're joining us here. And if you have a game you want to talk about or you got a question about, drop it in the chat room here. We'll get to as many as we can here coming up after we break down Missouri and South Carolina. And Jesse, let me start with you here, my man, because I don't know anybody not betting South Carolina. It feels like the entire damn world is betting South Carolina, which really gives me pause here. Yes, they're the hotter team. Better team thus far, but backup quarterback still from Missouri. Pine, I don't think is making anybody excited, but damn, 2 touchdowns in a SEC game. It feels like a big ask here. Is it for you?
I think this is a good game to stay away from, especially. And if you're not sure about that, just check the Missouri game last week and ask yourself, is that the kind of thing you want to get involved with? But yeah, I mean, the money's coming in on South Carolina for a reason. I would like to have some money on South Carolina here if I had gotten in a little bit earlier. I'd also like the under if I had gotten in a little bit earlier, but the total's down to 41.5 from 44.5. Maybe a Missouri team total under. I mean, you don't have a lot of faith in Drew Pine engineering much offense against this South Carolina defense. It should be an ugly game. It should be all South Carolina, and it should be a low-scoring battle.
All right, so you are backing South Carolina. Bryan, Leonard, my goodness, 14 points in an SEC matchup, and it's not like Missouri's terrible. What is 7-2 on the season? I mean, they got an opportunity here. The problem is when they lose big, and this is a big spread. Are you buying South Carolina to pull this one out by margin?
Well, my line with Brady Cook behind center is a 10, which means that the drop-off is 4 according to this line. I make a little bit higher. I think the drop-off is probably 5 or 6. Teddy talked about this along with ourselves last week as we went over this game. Big drop-off at quarterback for Missouri. The Tigers are fading fast as injuries have taken a major toll, especially when it comes to skill position players. Last week, they did outlast Oklahoma. I won't say they beat them. They outlasted Oklahoma 30-23. That 7-point victory is the largest win of the season for Missouri in SEC play. They've dominated the likes of Murray State, Buffalo, and Massachusetts by a combined 134-3. This is going to be the third-ranked team they faced so far this year. In the prior 2 games against ranked opponents, they were outscored 75-10. This is not a team in Missouri I want to back. South Carolina has 3 losses on the season, all to ranked opponents. LSU by 3. They did lose to Mississippi by 24. Then they came back and only lost to Alabama by 2. And you're this far into the season, you rarely see a team in the SEC that has only had 1 loss by more than 3 points. This is a good South Carolina team. You take a look at the power ratings, they've been going one way. Missouri's going the other way. The problem is the line of 14. I am seeing 13.5s out there at a couple places now. If this goes below 14, I'll be involved with South Carolina, but I don't want to have to lay 2 full touchdowns.
So I got to ask you, Teddy, it's a big ask. They've been red hot, though, right? You're talking about South Carolina here. What else can they do? I think they're 7-2 against the number. They've won 3 in a row. They handled Vanderbilt. So what? They're everybody's bowl eligible, it feels like here, but can we trust them? Are you confident with South Carolina, like the market appears to be, in laying 2 touchdowns here?
Hell yeah.
Boom.
No, I mean, it's not. Okay. Of all the misleading final scores last week, the Missouri 30-23 final against South Carolina might have been the most misleading. All right. Missouri's offense was a stick in the mud for the entire game. They finally got a little going in the 4th quarter, and they won the game on a fumble return touchdown. All right. All right. Missouri's offense without Brady Cook is broken. And Bryan talked about it. They've been on the road twice against good defensive teams, and they scored a combined 10 points in those 2 games. This offense doesn't work against good defenses. The other issue here, Missouri's a pure bet against for me. The other issue here is how good is South Carolina? Ranking-wise, I'm seeing them, 21st, 23rd. When you look at their resume, when you look at what they've done this season, when you look at what they've done over the last month, you can make an argument that South Carolina right now top 12 team, top 15 team, top 10 team. That's how good the Gamecocks are. And the markets are telling us that with the South Carolina money coming in. So if I'm playing, I'm laying. I want no part of this dog, and I am a Beamer believer.
Man, Beamer believer. I kind of like that. We're going to have to get that on a T-shirt there for you, Teddy. I think that's coming. Make sure you check the mail there. There you got it. It does feel like a big number. Will the Gambler on Instagram chimes in, says 2 touchdowns is crazy, but it certainly does kind of make me want to bet it, and you're not alone there. The market certainly agrees with you. South Carolina red hot here, looking to take no prisoners in this one against the Missouri team that, let's face it, Drew Pine, not exciting anybody here at this point. All right, we got another game coming up, and don't forget, like button, guys, subscribe button if you're joining us, and drop any games, questions you have about the Week 12 slate here. We'll get to as many of them as we can after, well, we break down the game of the weekend, right? Is Tennessee and Georgia. Will Georgia, is this it? Could they be picking up their 3rd loss against Tennessee, or will Tennessee, after a little time to figure it out, do they even have their freshman quarterback available to them? A lot of questions in this game. We know ETN is out, Jesse, so the running game for Georgia, backup running back, or though, do they really even have a running game? Because if they did, I missed it this year. They have a quarterback problem themselves. He looks like he's talking to himself. Good old Carson Beck. This is a tough one here. It feels like last week we had Georgia and Ole Miss. We all talked about an under because we thought the defenses were going to be really, really good. But doesn't it feel like the defenses are going to be really good in this one too, here in this game?
It sure does, and this is a really interesting game with some interesting media coverage. You had the Bear come out early in the week and say Nico's not going to play, and that was fishy as soon as it came out because Nico with a concussion and in concussion protocol. I'm not a doctor, but that strikes me as something that you got to visit that day by day and allow that to progress. That's not something you can make a statement on early in the week when you're talking about a weekend game coming ahead. So that one never really passed the smell test. I'm hearing that Nico's been practicing and getting better day by day, and there's still a strong chance he's going to play. And you mentioned Carson Beck. It seems like the media is giving him a pass. And certainly the bookmakers, when you see a line of 9.5, some 10s and 10.5s sprinkled on the board at times during the week, Carson Beck, 7 interceptions in his last 3 games against Ole Miss, Florida, and Texas. You got to wonder, this Georgia team just doesn't look anywhere near the level they have in previous seasons. And we got a bit of a glimpse of it in the win over Texas. But when you really look at that game against Texas, there was 7 turnovers in that game. Georgia turned the ball over 3 times. Texas turned the ball over 4 times. And what exactly is the predictive quality of a win when your opponent turns the ball over 4 times? I think it's less than a win that doesn't involve so many turnovers. With Carson Beck struggling and consistently struggling, it's not like he's coming off back-to-back bad games. He's been bad pretty much since the Clemson game. Coming out of that game, ever since then, he's looked like a shell of what he was last year. And, he's got sacks of money. He's dating a supermodel. Apparently he's driving a Lambo. Perhaps his mind is not on football at this moment. I like Tennessee plus the points. I expect Nico to play. Dylan Sampson's obviously going to be the best running back in this game. Tennessee's defense is holding opponents to 2.8 yards per carry. Georgia's defense is allowing 3.4 yards per carry. I think this is going to be a slugfest with both teams running it down each other's throats. But without Etienne, Georgia's run game has not been that impressive. So a low-scoring game, Tennessee gets the cover. That's the way I'm going to play it.
You like Tennessee getting the cover in this one. You're not buying the old he's in a concussion protocol, but yet he's practicing. Doesn't seems counterintuitive. If you ask me, don't believe everything you hear, Bryan Leonard, apparently. But listen, he's still a freshman. He has shown some warts against the better teams. this year. Josh Heupel's had some time to look at this game. Don't we always want to bet Georgia in this spot, right? Isn't this the Kirby Smart spot back against the wall at home? Nobody thinks you can win. Isn't this the whole Kirby Smart thing, or are you not buying that angle either?
Well, first of all, Jesse made a comment about the quarterback having all this money and everything and dating supermodels. That's exactly, and the only reason I don't date a supermodel is because I bring the winners to my clients. I don't want to keep anything away from that. Supermodels just get in the way of costing my clients money.
They really do. Yes, it's
but,
terrible.
To take a look at this Tennessee situation, the line opened about 8.5, 9. Now we're seeing 9.5, 10s. The betting public thinks he's going to play. I also think he's going to play. And I think this is a nice value play here on Tennessee. I only made this line 7. Now, granted, this is just a third true road game for the Volunteers. They won at Oklahoma 25-15. They did lose to Arkansas 19-14. But this is a team that should really thrive on the road. They have a terrific run game. They run for 5.04 yards per carry and only allow 2.80 defensively. So I want teams on the road that can run, and this team can run. That dominance on the line is exactly what we should take a look at in this game, and I think that's going to be the telling sign. You know, as physical, you mentioned Georgia and what they've done in the past, as physical as this Georgia team should be and has been in the past, they've got a -3 turnover deficit on the season. How often do you see a Georgia, an Alabama, a physical team out of the SEC that's got better players than just about everybody else not win the turnover battles? That's what this Georgia team is. They are more lackadaisical. I don't know if it's everybody's got their money and they don't want to play, but they've got better talent. They should be one of the best 2 or 3 teams in college football, and I don't think they are. So when you take a look at the Georgia running game compared to Tennessee, like I said, Tennessee 5 yards per carry, allowing less than 3. Georgia only 4.15, and they allow 3.35. So the battle on the line goes to Tennessee. The better quarterback, if healthy, is with Tennessee, and we're catching, 9.5, 10 points here. I like this Tennessee team. I'm going to fade Georgia in this one.
Woo, fading Georgia in this one. All right, Bryan Leonard stepping up with UT in this one. I'll say this, Will the Gambler over on Instagram says, I'm a huge Tennessee fan, but he thinks this line screams trap, Teddy, which might go along here with a side, depending on how you're looking at this game. I'll say this, Carson Beck, 2 touchdowns, 7 interceptions in the last 3 games. That doesn't scream confidence to me. They are home. Do you have enough confidence in Georgia and Kirby Smart to figure this thing out and rebound? But my goodness, again, almost double-digit spreads here.
Oh, no, I'm playing. If I'm playing, I'm laying. I want no part of Tennessee. I really don't. Let's start with this, all right? When college football, I start with the series history. 43-14, 44-21, 41-17, 27-13, 38-10. That's the last 5 meetings. Georgia won and covered them all. As high as -25, as low as -8, they're winning. Look at Tennessee's offensive numbers. 277 total yards, 289. They had 1 year where they got 387. They lost that game by 24. 214, 343, 209, 146. The Vols offense hasn't worked at all in any meeting against the Bulldogs defense. So we look at Tennessee's offense this year. Is it better? No, it's not. They're struggling offensively, consistently, week in, week out. This offense isn't clicking. This offense isn't moving the ball up and down the field. This offense is hoping for the defense to keep them in the game so they can try to find some rhythm after halftime. I mean, Tennessee's offense has been a major disappointment for more than a month now. Good early season numbers, not so much in SEC play. We got Georgia coming off a loss. Okay, interested. This is their season. If Georgia loses this game, they ain't going to the playoffs, dude. 3 loss teams. This is their season for Georgia. They've owned Tennessee, and I respect Bryan as so much, but I couldn't disagree more. Georgia has the better quarterback. Georgia's better on the offensive line. Georgia's better on the defensive line. And the fact that they've had turnover problems is not a bet against. It explains why they're point spread results have been so lousy. Georgia has no betting bandwagon. They've covered 1 point spread since beating Clemson. And we think about what they're likely to do moving forward, not looking back. I wouldn't expect Georgia to be losing the turnover battle week in, week out. So, yeah, if I'm playing, I'm laying. I only want the Bulldogs in this matchup.
Teddy, let me ask you here. If you like the Bulldogs, do you see any correlation to the Bulldogs in the under and any correlation with Tennessee in the over, right? You would think if Tennessee's going to beat Georgia, they're going to be putting some points up on the board, but you don't trust that offense. It feels like an under, too, no?
I wouldn't play this game over the total because, look, Tennessee, if it's a low-scoring game, if it's a low-scoring game, it's harder for Georgia to cover the number. If it's, but if my handicap is correct, I don't see the Vols scoring a whole lot of points in this one. So, team total Tennessee under is one that makes sense to me as well, but I haven't seen a number for that yet.
Bryan, what about you, though? Since you're leaning to University of Texas here, do you correlate it to an over or an under if Tennessee wins this game outright?
No, I think it goes under. And if you do go under, I like the points, as Teddy just pointed out. It's tough to lay points in a low-scoring game. History has been all on the side of Georgia. I just don't think this Georgia team is interested like they've been in the past. Tennessee, granted it's Georgia's Super Bowl right here, but isn't it for Tennessee?
Yeah.
If Tennessee goes on the road, that'll be their second loss. They haven't built up enough credit with the committee as Georgia's had. So, yeah, it's a big game for both of these teams, but I don't think it's going to be very high scoring at all.
Not thinking we're going to get a ton of points in this one. I agree. I think just like last week against Ole Miss, under is not a bad look. And I don't care who the quarterback is for Tennessee, quite honestly. I still think the under is the play in this one. All right, big shout out, by the way. John Maxwell over on TikTok says, listen, Georgia's going to win by 14 or more. The rest is just noise. We also got Bruce Cotney saying Georgia should win this by at least 17 or more. A lot of Georgia backers here in the chat rooms, and there's some guy named Jesse Schule in the chat too, talking about supermodels. So we'll see if we can get him on the show one day. Gentlemen, we do have some games and some questions coming in the chat room, and of course that's where you guys who are watching come in. If you're here live with us during the live stream, drop them in the chat. If you're watching on the replay, drop them in the comment section because we will absolutely keep tabs on this up till kickoff and get you as many answers as we can. And we'll start with a game that seems to be of interest with a lot of people in the chat room. And Jesse, I'll come to you. LSU taking on Florida at the Swamp. And we did learn that Lagway, I don't know how the hell this is possible either. The dude got carted off the field last week with a hamstring injury, but he's good to go apparently now, says Billy Napier. So Lagway is going to go, but he's a running quarterback. None of this makes any sense, Jess, but are you confident laying anything with LSU in the Swamp at this point?
No, I don't think this is a game where you can say that you have high confidence on either side. But I got to say, I had Florida team or a regular season win total under for the season just based on how difficult their schedule was going to be. I was kind of down on Billy Napier. I expected him to be fired at this point. He's done a pretty decent job keeping this team competitive week in, week out. If Lagway plays, I'm not sure it's a great spot for LSU coming off that Alabama loss. I would be more inclined to take the points with the dog here, depending on how Lagway looks and whether or not he's anywhere close to 100%.
Teddy, remember the days when playing a guy against the Swamp? Like if you were playing in the Swamp, there is no way you would be going against anything or any team. I don't care who it was coming to the Swamp. Those days are long gone, but quite honestly, Brian Kelly better get these guys ready to roll here because that looked kind of deflating to me last week against Alabama. Do you trust LSU to get it done here?
Trust is the wrong word. Because, again, going into the bye, they got smacked around by A&M. Coming out of the bye last week, non-competitive in defeat. In theory, last week was Circle the Wagons game. This is double Circle the Wagons game. And obviously, with everyone chirping about Brian Kelly, this is a game where LSU, as the better team, is supposed to go into the swamp and win. Trusting LSU to do that. Look, I've trusted LSU twice this year. They failed me twice this year. They're not a team I'm excited about trusting right now. And Nussmeier's not good enough. The passing game isn't good enough. The defense hasn't been good enough during crunch time. It's hard to trust them. So, yeah, it's an LSU spot in my mind.
Right.
But I've had my fun with LSU.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very fun.
Yeah, every time I bet them, they've either lost, I bet against them, they win. I give up on LSU here. I do think we might get some points in that game, if anything. Jesse, we are getting a couple of questions here about a couple of totals in this week here. One of them is tonight with North Texas and UTSA. 72.5 damn points. And then we got tomorrow, you got one with Washington State, I believe, against New Mexico. That's also 72 points. It's week 12. Does anybody play defense here, Jess? Are you worried about totals like that at this point in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're playing those games, you're probably going over because those totals are high for a reason. I don't make it a habit of playing overs on big numbers like that. But, you look at that Washington State game, maybe a Washington State team total over might be the play. I do expect those, if they don't get to that 72 or 73, I expect them to get pretty damn close. So, if you're planning on playing those games, I'd lean toward the over.
Brian, there's no way you're sweating out an under in any of those games. Either of those games, are you?
No, in fact, the game tonight, I did play the over in that one. You got two teams that have good offenses, play with a high pace, and they've got bad defenses. Now, the one thing you have to look at this time of the season and later, obviously, is the weather. That's what keeps a lot of these games down, the weather and the wind. But until it's broke, I'm not going to fix it. And I've been riding a lot of these teams in the smaller conferences on the over. I don't play a lot of totals. But if you get two teams that are going to go fast-paced, I'm looking for the over there, especially if the defenses have shown that they just can't make any stops.
It very tough with these with some of these totals when you start getting up this high. But there's really no way you're doing anything but looking and backing the over. If you're going to play it, you're going to hope for fireworks because that's what those teams deliver. Teddy, we got another big question about the Qs. A lot of Syracuse fans in the chat can't figure out why it is they're getting 9 points on the road in California. Well, I have a good idea. I think I have an idea. Teddy, do you have any idea why it is they're a 9-point dog here on the road? And do we like California to lay this, the latest number at home?
Yeah, Cal's pretty good. All right. And we've seen Cal make their backers a fair bit of money, 4-1 against the spread their last 5, 6-2 against the spread since opening day, or since they failed to cover their first one. And of course, they kept on losing these heartbreakers. They had the Pitt game, they had the Miami game, they had the NC State game, all of which they probably should have won and found a way to lose. Well, the last 2 ball games with a bye in between, they're starting to find ways to win, and it's a pretty good team. So that's at least part of the reason why the money's come for Cal this week. The other part of the reason is from a spot standpoint. Markets don't love this spot for Syracuse. I don't blame them. This is a long, long trip. They played 1 home game since September. They travel to UNLV. They travel to NC State. They travel to Pitt. They travel to BC. Now they're traveling out to the West Coast. That's a lot of travel for college kids. It really is a lot of travel for anyone. And coming off back-to-back barn burners. They had the game against Virginia Tech where they rallied from behind and ended up, stealing it late. And then last week against BC, another back-and-forth battle that came down to the wire. They've already clinched bowl eligibility, and it kind of feels like an exhale spot. I can understand why Cal is taking money. I can only play Cal in this spot.
Yeah, Wilcox has been done a really good job there at Cal. Do any of you, a couple of questions that came in, Timothy Crickhatch seems to think Houston is the right play tonight, taking on Arizona. Jess, you got a feeling one way or another? I mean, it feels like Arizona has basically thrown the towel in on the season here. What have they lost? 5 in a row? UCF just drubbed them here. And Houston, boy, oh boy, it looks like they might be figuring some things out. Utah, Kansas State, coming off a bye week. Is it Houston the value play here tonight for you, Jess?
It sure looks like it. In fact, I used to work with a guy who had a signature play called Fade the Dead. And that guy might be on this panel. But it certainly looks like Arizona is the dead, and Houston with the chance to get bowl eligible. I certainly would agree with the sentiment that Houston looks like the play in this game.
Let me ask, that's a good point, though, because there were a couple of comments in the chat rooms about teams throwing the towel in. Teddy, this time of year, do you look for teams like that? Maybe a team like, there's a lot of people think Oregon State is basically done. Stick a fork in them. There's nothing left to play for with some of these teams here. Do you buy into that at the college level? Do you think some of these coaches could, in fact, lose the locker room and are playing for next year? How does it work in your mind?
I think it's generally overrated.
Okay.
All right. There are certainly teams down the stretch, a handful of teams that I'm going to want no part of, where you read the quotes, the locker room's dicey, the coach is probably on the way out or a new system coming in or whatever it is. There are certainly a handful of situations where the free falling teams, you're not going to bet on those teams. But the betting markets are the great equalizer. Yeah, if this team was plus 14 and they're dead and now they're plus 24 instead, well, maybe they're a little bit liver in that point spread range. So it's not a situation where you're automatically betting against teams that have struggled. Even teams that have struggled are capable of hanging around again, especially against opponents who are struggling as well.
Yeah, no, big time. It is, there are some teams you want to avoid altogether here, guys. But if you do have a game and you want to know more about them, talk to us here. We've got, drop them in the comment section. Of course, we'll be watching the comment section all throughout the weekend leading up to kickoff on these games. We'll go one more here. And Bryan, I'm coming to you because there seems to be a lot of people that don't think Ohio State is necessarily going to be all that interested against Northwestern. They got a pretty big game coming up next week against Indiana. That's a huge number anyway, right? I mean, what are we looking at here? 20 over 4 touchdowns. That's not exactly been Ryan Day's specialty, winning and covering these kinds of games. But they should beat Northwestern, but will they beat them by over 4 touchdowns?
One thing I always look at is if you have dominant teams, they're usually public teams, and they don't take money. That tells me a lot about a game. And this game opened 30.5. It's been back down to 28.5. It is being played at Wrigley Field, so it's not a normal home game, obviously, for Northwestern. But, yeah, I agree. Especially with this Ohio State team, there's been plenty of times where they have overlooked the lesser teams on their schedule. They've looked very good as of late, so they don't have any reason to come out and blow the opposition away. And, as weak as Northwestern has been over the years, they've always been a pretty good underdog. And not with this, they've had coaches before that were great underdogs and must bets. But this is a team that is used to giving a good effort against very good teams and staying in there. So, yeah, as long as you delay or you take more than 28 here, I think Northwestern's a pretty good play.
And Teddy, you would have this because I know you have it open on your screen there. The question coming in from Roger wants to know the look-ahead line for next week's Indiana-Ohio State game. Is there any value in hopping on that now? I'm guessing that number is probably out, right? I don't know what that number would be, but if it makes sense to get Ohio State if you're leaning that way now?
So the look-ahead lines, you get them for NFL. College football, you have only games of the year lines that are available on a handful of games, and I didn't see Ohio State, Indiana, but before the year it wasn't a big game.
Yeah, who knew
so
that?
I don't have a number for that, so I can't. And I haven't seen it. I don't know if you guys have, Bryan or Jesse.
9.5.
I have 9 as well.
I have 9.5. I think we're seeing. Does it make any sense to look at Ohio State now before this game against Northwestern, or wait?
If you like Ohio State now, it certainly wouldn't hurt you to make 2 bets instead of 1. You know, if the Buckeyes go into the Indiana game, would they win 45-0 over Purdue? If they have a similar result against Northwestern, I would not be surprised if that point spread is 10 or higher. So if Ohio State crushes Northwestern, make 1 bet on Ohio State. You make 2 bets on Ohio State, you're probably getting the best of the number for next week.
Yeah. Well,
that being said, Indiana's built up a big betting bandwagon, right? They really have. So, deservedly so.
Yeah. Give them credit.
It's got to be anywhere between 7 and 10, and those are the key numbers. If it's 7, you bet Ohio State. If it's 10, you bet Indiana. If it's in the middle, I think you just enjoy it.
I think it should be a fun one for sure. Jesse, you are locked and loaded, no doubt, my friend, for this weekend. I don't know if you're involved in any of these college football games here tonight, but tell the folks what you got rolling over at WagerTalk.com.
I do have an NBA total for the in-season tournament tonight, and I've got a 5% play in college football going tomorrow night.
Got to go get him. WT.buzz/JS, as you guys see it there. Bryan, Leonard, how about you, my man? No doubt locked, loaded, a loaded card in college hoops, loaded in the NHL, NBA. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I've got a top play going in NHL, and I've got 1 play in college basketball, and I had that over in that game we spoke about earlier for tonight. And we're still working on tomorrow's card. I've got 1 up now with probably about 3 more to go. Looking for a big weekend. Been on a pretty good run in just about every sport.
Ooh, like it. All right, we'll get to that answer in just a minute. I just saw that come in on Instagram. Does Cam Ward still have a shot at a Heisman? I'm holding a 15-1 ticket. Not if Colorado wins out, he doesn't. I'll tell you that right now. Teddy, let me ask you. I know you've got a great deal with your buddy DePrez right now that folks can hop on board. Well, listen, I mean, say, the guy's hot, so you can't go wrong with that here. And what else you got locked, loaded, ready to roll here at Wager Talk for us?
Yeah, the Odd Couple promo is going all weekend long. It's just a 3-day all-access pass. You buy me, you get Prez 3 days for free. You buy Prez, don't do that. You get my 3 days for free. You check it out on my page, WT.buzz/TC. And again, that gives you every play, including the 5% big ticket in the NFL. I went back and looked lifetime since 2018. I'm like, I think I've been pretty good on these. 44 and 25, 64% lifetime. That's, a 7-8 year track record for the NFL big tickets, including 69% with the last 13, 1 last week. So you can get that. My college card is coming shortly, as like Bryan Leonard, a little bit up against it this morning, but it'll be posted as we speak. And of course, the NBA has been a profit center for the clients for the last X number of years, up more than 200 units, riding a pretty good streak this week, 75% run. So starting to see things appropriately in the association as well. Don't buy any plays. Get a package. Visit the website, WT.buzz/TC. Thank you.
Gotta love it, Teddy Covers. And Jesse, the chat wants to know, have you gotten your Colorado National Championship tickets already to go with the jersey you bought? Is that or a Heisman, maybe a Heisman winner, and Hunter? What do you think?
Yeah, I like Hunter to win the Heisman. The jersey is actually a Hunter jersey, but I certainly I'm not the biggest Colorado fan. I got the jersey because I lost the bet.
Well, we know that, Jesse. Trust me, and so does the chat room, man. All right, you guys are the best. Good luck this weekend. We appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, but don't go anywhere, because if college basketball is what tickles your fancy, we've got the college basketball tip-off show coming up here in about 10 minutes. We'll get you covered with all the big games here tonight, and then, of course, 3:30 Eastern time, get ready for the NBA tip-off show as we cover the 12 games in night number 2 of the NBA Cup. So a lot going on here at Wager Talk TV. Even more reason for you to go ahead, smash that like button. Better yet, hit the subscribe button and become part of that Wager Talk TV family. Best of luck, guys. We appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. College basketball tip-off next here on Wager Talk TV.